participant as you, right? Oh, you guys want to stand? Oh, just like more. No worries. Then they said to do yours. Good job. It can only be a small dose than a big one. They're very sweet. Those are the ones. They're getting busy about 4 and it goes up. I usually leave around 5:30. Yeah, because of that. Yes. But she just trying. I don't mind them. It's just, you know. Sure. Well, it's not a long. You're like you previous. Way back. What happens here is pretty close. It's nice and fast. Yeah. Then it's huge. It's very bad for two. One down for sheets. Yeah, good dogs. Not too many here. At least the times I come. Probably in the morning. Really good dogs. So. Hi, Karen. Got your microphone on. Hi, Karen.
Hello.
We're trying to test the sound in the room, so thank you for answering.
You're welcome. I'm answering from Oregon where it's 60 degrees.
Oh, nice.
It's only 94 here.
That's good. That's very manageable.
Welcome, Teresa.
Hi, thanks.
The TV. TV's not for 75. Okay.
It's like 90.
Okay. And it can give them up.
I'm going to wait a couple of minutes and see if anyone else is joining us. Sorry for the delay. Just waiting to see if Susan's joining us, and she is. Hi, Susan.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks. Thanks for joining.
Sure.
Hi, Susan.
Sorry, I'm a little late. I keep having to look up the password. I got to get a little better organized on that password business.
Okay, so just want to go down the agenda. So prior meeting minutes. Does anybody have any question on those?
I think I already approved them via email. I
Thank
have no
you.
questions, yeah.
Okay, everybody approve them?
I move to approve the previous, the June minutes.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Okay, financial statements, we got them today. That was exciting. I don't know if everyone's had a chance to review them, to come up with any questions.
I haven't had a chance to look at them, but I did notice that they just came into my inbox. Way to go.
Yeah, Nicole really pushed that through for us. That was great.
Thank you. Yeah, the only question I have is, Susan answered this question last month regarding the payment of the state and federal taxes. I don't want to keep harping on this, but I was led to believe that they were paid, there was, a motion was made last November, October of 23 to approve the spend out of reserves, which is fine. However, I didn't see in the financial statements that we received today, ending June 30th, I did not see a reserve account for state and federal taxes. So I'm just wondering how that works.
That's a great question. I think I just have this memory of it being in it. Well, Nicole probably can't answer that. Is Nicole there?
No, she's not.
Is she not coming to the meetings anymore?
No, she's otherwise engaged.
Oh, no. Well, that's makes it harder on us.
Then my recommendation would be then we just go ahead and refer back to Nicole for a follow-up for an explanation.
Yeah, there's some place where it comes out of, and if you, and maybe Tara can answer this too, or Will. I see I know he's not a finance committee member, but he probably remembers it doesn't come out of a line item fund because it's not budgeted.
I think you're right. I think that's where the issue lies, is should it be budgeted or not? And it seems to me, I recall that because it varied so much, depending on what's happening in the markets, the decision was not to budget it, but.
Yeah, I think, I would have to disagree with that. I think we should try to be as accurate as possible to be able to estimate the taxes for 2025. We know what our interest rates are. They may be going down. However, as individuals, we have to pay estimate taxes. I don't see any reason why we can't do it for this association, at least from a budget standpoint.
I mean, I have to say I'm with Carol on this, John. I definitely understand you're feeling like it's a little out of control, and we like to know, we like to know stuff. But I think in this case, everybody felt, and this has been talked about for years and years and years. It's not the first time this has come up, and you can ask Browning about it next week when we get together. But I believe there's some offset of inflation, and which is also not budgeted. And I'm going to get it all wrong, but there are some very good reasons why we don't, even though the impulse is to try and know exactly where all our pennies are being spent. But I would say put that on the list of things you want to ask Browning about, because you'll get a better answer, a good answer from him.
Good idea. Thanks. Let's talk to him about it and see, because I think before our investments were changing around and they weren't really great rates and such. And I think we've got a pretty stable situation now. And so we may even, just a year or two out, be able to do some guesstimates at least on it. So we'll see what he says.
Sounds good.
So do we want to do our financial statement approval by email?
I think that's a great idea, Carol. It'll give us a chance to take a look at it a little bit. And should we just include any questions in emails first too, or?
Yes, I think that's a good idea. Yeah. Where are we?
Was there,
How about-
did you get a chance to look through them, Carol? Was there anything that caught your eye?
No, I haven't had a chance either. How about we say end of this week, Friday?
Sounds good.
Does that work for everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Then our update from general manager. Nicole didn't really have any updates. The reserve contribution is we're still monitoring that to see when that can be done. I asked her about the water meter project, and of course we've gotten the billings, so to speak, and I've sent those out to everyone to review. Nicole has said that they won't need any more assistance from us on budgeting relative to that item. That apparently the board is working on that. But I think it would be wise for us to take a look and talk about it as well, so that we can advise the board with our thoughts or additional suggestions or questions. It would be nice to get something in there. And I know, John, you suggested putting something in as a separate line item. And I think that's a good idea, so that we can distinguish between the two. So maybe we can talk about that in the Browning meeting.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, I love the idea of being a little better informed about just the pattern of expenses regarding water. I think people are going to have a lot of questions about water use, and
Yes.
the more we know, the better.
Yeah. So Courtney, as liaison, do you have any update?
I don't have anything to add, except that, yes, we are preparing for the July 24th meeting with Bob Browning. And we have not discussed anything regarding the water billing, at least as yet. So I'm hoping that I'm going to suggest to the other board members that we do actually talk to the finance committee about that and get your ideas and thoughts on that, because it's a rather big item that's coming.
Yeah, you're right. And it's coming up quickly, because if we're starting the billing process in this coming January, then we really need to be able to let homeowners know in the October timeframe what differences they're going to see.
Yes, I agree. And like I said, it's possible that we're going to start discussing it in August, after we get through the Bob Browning meeting and with the committees. But I'll make sure to put that on any agenda that we have going forward into August, and we can talk about it in the open as well. So.
Can I ask Courtney whether, oh, sorry, I'm sorry, I can't tell who's talking, so I apologize. Go ahead. Just let me know when you can recognize me when convenient.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Susan.
Oh, sorry, John. I was just wondering from Courtney whether there was anything that they're looking at as a board regarding the reserve study. Is there anything that, you know, we should try and pay special attention to as we, you know, think about, review the reserve study?
I would like to say yes, but no, we haven't, as a board, gotten together for the purpose of discussing what we would want to talk about at the meeting with Bob Browning. As you know, we kind of have to call a session. We can't just meet impromptu.
Yeah.
But I do plan on talking to Marcus, the board president, and just letting him know if they have any thoughts, if the other members have any thoughts about what they want to discuss beyond what we come up with here. I have some questions personally, just as a person reading the reserve study. And I'm happy to share them with anybody who will listen, but most people kind of tune out when you talk about 296-page reserve study. They're not excited about it. So, but I do have a lot of questions that I've been writing down and thinking about and asking Nicole. So I think that might be the way we're going with this.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Susan, have you had a chance to look at it, to come up with any thoughts?
Well, I was just, you know, kind of superficially looking through the siding stuff, and I was just starting to look through the landscaping plan. And I did notice that Browning put us on a 24-year cycle with the siding, which is really great. Because that means that our efforts to find material for siding that would, you know, kind of reduce the amount of number of times we had to replace the siding worked, was effective. So that should have saved us a little bit of money. And did you calculate the percent increase from year over year, Carol, when you were looking at it?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you were asking.
I was just starting to do this, but then thought, oh, you probably had already done it. Looks like there's an increase of $17.92 per lot per month in the contribution to reserves.
I think that's where Browning is starting with, lacking any input from the board or from us, and any changes that we might suggest and ask him to make.
Right, but I mean, you know, the big ticket items are going to be the siding and painting, right? I mean, that's huge, and landscape is huge also. But so to me, it was encouraging that he was using such a long replacement cycle on the siding. The painting cycles staying at 6, which should protect the wood siding better.
Yes, good point.
But I just didn't know what the percent increase was.
I think it's 5.35.
Oh, is that
I'm
right?
not mistaken, because
Oh, yeah.
that's
You're
what he's using
right.
throughout. That's what he uses throughout all of the 30 years.
Right, but he sets that percent increase at the beginning of the year, like he anticipated last year that the increase would be like, I don't know, 7% or something horrible, until we cut it down. So if that makes sense, he calculates out that percent increase over the 30 years, based on, you know, how much we need in the most costly years, the years that have the most expenses projected.
Susan, this is John. So what was the increase for 25? Was it 17 and change?
Yeah, it was 1791, I think. I just divided it by 334 to get 5.35, so but I think that's right. I think it was,
Yeah, you're right. He does have 5.35 showing each year ongoing throughout the reserve study. And I'm not real sure, other than inflation, which would be a part of that, but certainly not all of it. I'm not clear on what that represents.
right. Well, yeah, he has a fancy algorithm that projects costs of materials and labor, over the years. And so he looks to see what we would anticipate spending on, let's just say, siding 24 years from now. And then he figures out how much we have to put in reserves every year in order to get to whatever our costs are going to be that 24 years later, plus that additional 5 million. That's our threshold criterion.
I would think that the amounts in the line items by themselves should allow us to forecast effectively the 30 years out, the 24 years, whatever, every 8 years, every 6 years. And so I don't know that we really need to have something on top of that doubling up. But, that's a question we can ask when we talk with him.
Well, I think that buffer is really important because these are only guesses. And a project, for instance, like our siding project, it went over the anticipated cost by quite a bit. So if we hadn't, built in that buffer amount, then we would have come close to, well, we're not close, but we could have come close to spending out our reserves, which would be bad. I mean, you just never know what's going to happen. And so that 5 million, which is about, I don't know, maybe it's about a little less than 50% of our total assets. I can't remember exactly.
Right. What was it? 5 million is about 50% of our total assets. So yeah.
And I'm not suggesting that we remove the 5.35%. I'm suggesting we take a look at it, and maybe it should be less, maybe it should be more, but we need to clearly understand what it is and what the board wants and what the finance committee suggests to the board that should go in there, that Browning should put in there.
Yeah. Well, as I say, I think that 5.35% is what we need in order to, we have to increase our contribution to the reserves every year in order to get to this anticipated amount, at the
Correct.
most
And I
possible.
understand that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
it's just that 5.3 was decided on a year ago. And so I think.
No, he just decided on that for this reserve. It wasn't a year ago. Last year's percent increase was higher, I believe. I'm trying to find out where that was, and I can't find it right now. Where is it, Carol, in the?
I want to say it's towards the very, very end, but I don't remember the page number.
Okay, I'll look back here and see. Well, I don't want to interrupt. If I find the number, I'll put it on the chat or something like that.
Yeah, I think we know it's 5.3.
No, I mean for last year, if you were interested.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Thought it was going to be last year, if that makes sense.
And I have the last few years reserve studies, so I can look it up too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. So any other thoughts around the reserve study and the upcoming meeting? And
Just for the minutes, is there anything we need to follow up with Browning on that particular agenda item? On the reserve study, is there any questions we have so we can get it documented?
do any of us have any questions? Is that what you're asking?
As an action item for the, yeah, on this agenda item for, we can put it down, because I'm putting it as action item, I'm listing questions for Browning for our July meeting.
Mhm.
And I don't have anything here for reserves. And I just want to know if there was anything that we want, based on our conversation we just had, is there any follow-up for an action with him on the 24th? Any action with him on the 24th?
Well, I guess, I mean, I'm interested in knowing the understanding behind the decisions on funding the landscape items, but I'm not sure whether that's a Browning issue. Maybe it is, or I always kind of get nervous because I think, oh, should I know this by just looking in the reserve study, or do I need to ask Browning about it? You know?
Well, I think the board will be there, we'll be there, and Bob Browning will be there. So I think in my mind, it's an open meeting to discuss everything. And I'm not aware of another meeting we'll have to discuss with the board what our thoughts are.
Yeah, well, I don't know that we ever get a lot of information about what their thoughts are. You know what I mean? I mean,
Exactly. That's why I requested that we be included in this meeting so that we could hear everyone's thoughts and suggestions and hear what Browning's suggestions were as well. And so I think it'll be a really good opportunity for us to all understand the way we're each thinking.
yeah, I agree.
Anyway, okay. So the operating budget. I don't know if, has anyone had a chance to look at it very much?
Well, I have to say that I find it more useful to take a look at that budget once the manager is filled in, you know, her thoughts about what those line items are going to look like for the next year. Is she's really the one that, you know, knows about contract costs and, you know, what's working, what's not working. And I don't know, I only speaking for myself, I just don't know that stuff. So I have to kind of listen to her first and then ask questions.
Well, I think we can certainly come up with questions for her and send those over to her. When I looked at it, I was just noticing what things maybe at this point, halfway through the year, maybe are over budget. And is there some reason we need to look at them to revisit the budgeting amount for next year? Should that be increased or maybe it should be decreased or whatever? So those are the kinds of things I'm looking at.
And I think that's great. I think that's something that she does when she's budgeting though. I mean, that's what Betsy always did.
Yeah,
So,
although I don't see any reason why we can't have our input as well. I mean,
Yeah.
we're advisors to the board. And so I think that as advisors, it's our job to give input and ask questions if we're not sure. I don't think there are a lot of items that, you know, like the pool service is the pool service, and Nicole will know whether that contract has already been determined to go up or down or whatever. But there are things on there. I know that the delinquent costs and the legal bills have been high, and it'll be good to understand whether those are going to continue at that level, the delinquencies and such. Those kinds of things. So if we could all put together our questions and send them to me, then I would be happy to send those questions to Nicole.
well, you know, I do have just off the top of my head one thing that was an issue last year, and I kind of wondering what was decided about it. And that was, there was a pot of money allocated for homeless cleanup for the pools, the spas. And then we were talking about the advantages of maybe putting in some kind of different fencing and what the cost of that would be. So that'll be something that will be interesting to look at and kind of.
That's a good point. And I think the Dunbarton pool fencing was going to be changed if it hasn't already. I thought that was already set. Do you know, Jay? You don't know? Okay. So that's definitely a question. Why don't you jot that down, add it to your email,
Okay,
and we can check.
sounds good.
Because I know that was one thing that they thought, that it was so easy to get over that fence, that if it was higher, or there was some kind of fencing change that could be made that was supposed to be a real deterrent.
Yeah.
Well, let's do a deliverable on the operating budget questions for, can we say Thursday? I'm looking at the calendar and I know that we have a limited amount of time to get our suggestions to the board on the budget.
Yeah, I can try. I can try.
That'd be great. Thanks. And then if you have something follow up, we can add that at a later date.
Okey doke.
There's only really a few line items we can affect, right? I mean, if we're honest, it's, and there's a few things that have been running over. As I looked, we might take a look at those things.
Well, wasn't one thing too, Nina, that like security that we went back and forth on, and there was something about like website stuff and whether to, I can't remember what it was. There was some cost associated with website management. But you're right, there were just really only a few things, and everything else was like all the contract with First Service, that's negotiated by the board.
Yeah, and I see that so we have the general counsel service, and we have delinquency monitoring, and we have AMS collection expense. And all three of those kind of go into that same arena, where we might need to look at some potential increases in the budget there, or find out if those are going to continue at that level. Another thing that
You're right. There's always questioning about the security every year. Is it worth it? Everybody's got a little bit different opinion on that. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not, yeah, so we need to check on that homeless issue. And then there was something else I was thinking that I had asked Nicole about one day, and I'm trying to remember what it was, but I'm not remembering. So when I think of that, I will add that to an email to everyone.
Do you know if Nicole is happy with the staffing? That was something that we talked a lot about last year. That we had that handyman, and I think they're happy with the way things are now. But we talked a lot about, the advantages, disadvantages of having somebody on staff.
Yeah, I've been watching the elite costs, and it seems like I know they're in several different places, But just in my perusal over time, it seems like there's still less than having someone on staff full-time, including taxes and benefits and such.
I would think that would be the case. I'm glad to hear some actual evidence to that effect.
Yeah. Okay. So, so I think our deliverables are around the operating budget.
Yeah, the operating budget and also the, including any questions by Friday the 7th, this Friday, as it relates to financial statements.
Is this for Browning, John, or is it this by Friday?
This Friday about the financial statements so that we can, if we have any questions, we can get those cleared up and do an approval of those if
Okay.
it's warranted. And then this Thursday for the operating budget questions.
Okay.
Okay. So do we have any homeowner comments or questions? Okay. Oh, Will, do you have a
Yes.
question?
A question. I understood Susan to say that Browning has now set the replacement cycle on siding at 24.
That's, you're a little cutting out, Will, but that's what I saw in the reserve study.
Okay, 2/3 of the siding is still T111, and the longest we've ever gone is 12 years. And things were pretty ratty at the end of 12 years, but both the siding and the trim. So 24, I mean, it just raises, I've been probably the strongest advocate for changing materials and getting and lengthening this thing out, but 24 years does not seem, if that's in fact what he's talking about, it doesn't seem realistic to me.
I was thinking, I'm a little confused on that as well. I was thinking that the siding review was every 8 years and the painting was every 6 years.
Well, I think that's the old cycle. The painting is every 6 years for sure. But he's got the wood siding and trim at 12 years. And then the big long-term siding at 24.
Yeah, at 12 years may be reasonable with
Yeah.
the new replacement. I'm not sure what whether he's just, he historically had a figure in there for total replacement
Yeah.
because that's the way he structured it. But it actually makes no sense because since we do it cyclically, there's never going to be a point at which you do total, all the siding's bad simultaneously and you have to go in and repair it all, replace it all. So I'm not sure what's going on there. And, I'm not on the committee. It's not my responsibility. I just thought I'd point out that somebody needs to understand what's going on.
Yeah, it's a good point. And, he may, and I haven't really delved into this deeply, but he may have, upped the yearly expenses or costs of, because they were building in some money to be able to handle problems that came up yearly. And maybe he increased that amount to try and capture some of those.
It is considerably more expensive to do those small jobs than it is to do the large project. I mean, we get stuck with those every year because of pest, inspections and sales, but they do run considerably more. They're higher than what we pay when we do a project because the setup and the tear down and all that.
Yeah, that's that's a good point.
Okay, thanks,
I don't
Will.
know. I just raised the question as something that needs to be clarified.
Yeah,
I think we're writing that down definitely as something to include in our questioning with Bob Browning. Teresa, I see you have a question. Go ahead, Teresa. Do you want to unmute?
Sorry.
There you
At the
go.
board meeting, you presented quite 2 or 3 charts with a considerable amount of data, but very little explanation and certainly not enough time for a homeowner like me to digest it. And the exiting comment was maybe an idea that, oh, with what you presented, we might be able to decrease dues $88. And I just feel that when you're presenting something like that, it should be in a different forum so that people can study it with you and get educated with you and be able to ask questions.
That's a good point, Teresa. And unfortunately, we haven't got I don't think we have a forum for finance planned, but we could certainly look into that. We don't really have the time to do that before the reserve study is put to bed for this year. But you're absolutely right. Having more understanding and more information for the homeowners is always a good idea.
But my point is that presenting it at the board meeting in a minute or 2 is not appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
can I just say one more thing, Carol? And I'm sorry, this is not connected with the homeowner comment at all. It's just more to our points of questions that we want to ask Browning. I think it would be good for him to explain exactly what his plan was for the siding and trim, because he's got 2 different line items for siding and trim, and one is at a 24-year life cycle and the other is at 12. And then there's some at 6. So it would be really good for him to explain exactly what his thinking is. So
Yeah, we've
John-
got that captured in the
Yeah, oh.
notes. I've got that captured in my
Good.
notes.
Okay,
I think
great.
that's definitely a question we'll be asking.
Yeah, it's very confusing.
Okay. Okay, then I think we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good evening.